Along with Mr. Fantastic, I've been playing a lot of Invisible Woman, and she's legit. Her support kit's a little bit different from the other ones, but that's a really good thing. Her overall kit has a very high ceiling. I've been playing her a little bit differently, doing different things with her, and I've been doing them very successfully. As a strategist, she has a lot of strengths going for her: healing, disruption, stealth. And as with all heroes, she does have some weaknesses, but she can combat those. Overall, she's very good. There's multiple second-to-second decisions at your disposal, and as always, these guides are to help all skill levels. Understand the hero more and do better. There's going to be a ton of tips along the way. She has a ton of extremely cool things that you can do. But before we start here, remember, your job is to keep your team healthy, and Invisible Woman's kit allows her to do that very easily with the things that you can do. That's your main goal: support. You will get kills. She can hold her own, but you want to be support first and foremost. So let's start with her primary attack, and this attack kind of starts her whole kit off on how and where to play her. Or projection, it's left click, and on controller it's right trigger. Launch a force field orb that pierces heroes, flying to maximum distance before returning to Invisible Woman, damaging enemies and healing teammates. So the special effect is that it's just kind of like Storm. It goes through allies, goes through enemies, it goes through any hero. The distance is 30 meters, the orb comes out and it comes back. For each ally or enemy, it can hit them twice, once on the throw and then once on the return. And since it's 30 meters, if there's a wall or a structure stopping that, the time frame is shortened because it doesn't go the full 30 meters. It goes to the wall, bounces back. A shorter distance, meaning faster hits and healing. It deals 20 damage per hit, and it heals allies for 40 hit points per hit. Since it goes back out and in, total damage per shot is 40 on enemies, and the healing is 80 on allies. This is constrained to 30 meters. There's no fall off. So when you hit something, just period, they're going to get the full health if they're an ally, or they're going to take the full damage as an enemy. Now, there's some things you can do since it is a bounce back mechanism. You can aim at their feet, and since that's a structure, the ground, it comes back. So essentially, both hits are the same exact time, which can be effective. I mean, if you're able to, let's say a Spider-Man comes from across the map to you, stands in front of you, needs to get healed, sure. But you don't want to be aiming at the feet, like, period. 99.999% of the time. Don't recommend that because the flow of her kit doesn't like that either. So where she plays, I found the best is the mid and back line. You're going to be true backline at times with the other supports, but it's going to depend on the map and who you have with you. Her comfort zone is right here. This is where you want to live with Invisible Woman, and this is what's nice about her kit. You're a healer first, so you could be that midline behind your tanks and DPS, or even the backline, but you're just spamming shots. Those shots go through your teammates, healing them for 80 health because the shot's coming out and back, but you're also dealing 40 damage to enemies. And since she's limited to 30 meters, you can't be way back there. If you are, you can play right on the edge of that, and if you want, you can use the ping system. That'll give you an actual number. If it says 29 meters, you're gonna get the double hit pretty much immediately. But regardless, just at base, because her primary pierces, it goes through allies and enemies, this is where she lives, and from right here, the rest of her kit starts to take shape. Next, I want to talk about the Guardian Shield. It's actually a good chunk of the video. This ability I view and use a lot differently than others. It's right click, and on controller it's left trigger. Extremely high value ability that has 3 important parts. Generate a force field in front of a selected ally. The shield can block damage. It provides healing over time to nearby allies. Enemies that pass through the shield are slowed. So it's got a cooldown of 6 seconds. The cast range is 30 meters, the same as her primary, her kit. The shield has 300 hit points. For allies, it heals 50 health points a second, and the heal range is a 3-meter radius, so you could be in front of the shield. To the center point, just around it 3 meters, and you start getting that healing. The special effect of this ability is before the shield is destroyed, Invisible Woman can choose to reproject the shield onto selected teammates at any time. After the shield has been damaged, Invisible Woman can press the F key to reclaim the shield and restore its value. So any teammate, you can place it on them when the shield has health, like go from one to another, just spam it out. And as the shield takes damage, you see it on your screen, 300 health, 250, 200, so on. It goes down to 0, then it breaks. And it might even get crushed instantly by something. You might throw it up, gets crushed. But if the shield has health on it, if you reclaim it, it's F, and on controller it's B. You take the shield back to cooldown. And the duration for that cooldown is per 50 shield health. So every 50 health is a second with this thing. Meaning if it has 250 health when you reclaim it, it comes back as a 1 second cooldown. 200 health, 2 seconds. All the way down to 50 health, 5 seconds. And if it breaks, that's the full 6 seconds. So the more healthy this thing is when you recall it, the faster the cooldown is to get it back to full health. Enemy-wise, when an enemy passes through it, they're going to get slowed for 30% for 3 seconds. And more on this in a moment. You will be utilizing this. What I have found, Invisible Woman has some of the best localized single target healing in the game. Because what I do and what I try to do about 90% of the time with this shield is constantly use it as a healing tool. And this is what I mean. As you know, you can do things like put the shield on a Punisher. You're going to do that when applicable. That's a good thing to do. Give them that 300 shield behind their turret. But since you're able to constantly redirect this shield, you're playing the mid line. Your projectiles shoot through your allies, they hit enemies, they come back. When you redeploy this thing on somebody, every time you redeploy it, it gives 50 health. It's a stationary shield. We aren't stationary. We aren't playing this game stationary, except for some key heroes. But as they're running away or they're jumping away, you can constantly recast this shield on them, every time giving them health. And that does some important things, because what you can do is primary heal, cast shield, and then start primary healing. And just the act of your primary, then the shield is 130 health, like instantly. 80 from your primary, because it goes out and back, 40-40, then 50 from the shield. You can constantly move that shield around ally to ally, burst healing at 50 at a time. And then you're going to follow up with your primary. And yes, that shield will take damage. That shield will break. That is fine, because that's literally its job. You're never wasting a shield if you do this, I've noticed, because, I mean, like, you can look at this magic right here. Into their life. Do the shield health combo. In no time, very fast, she's healthy. That's what I like to do. If it's chaotic, I drop that shield everywhere I can, burst healing. But that's only when it's chaotic. Otherwise, I throw the primary heal, drop the shield, and heal them all the way up. Because you get the chunk heal from the combo, and now it's 50 health per second that the shield's giving along with your primary healing. It is never a wasted shield. Let's get that right, like out of the gate, because it blocks 300 damage. 300. Undoubtedly, some of that 300 damage that it absorbed would have been the killing final blow on a teammate. And if it takes 6 seconds to come back, so be it. The shield did its job. Everything did its job. And if it's chaotic, you're doing all these things, when it settles down, recall it. You're gonna get the cooldown a little bit faster. It's too important of a tool not to abuse. And other ways to use it, you can use the shield to float around. You can keep it in a spot to get yourself healthy too. Like, say I'm spot healing, doing my thing, I take some damage, I'll just keep it where it is, I'm gonna get healthy right back. You can put the shield on a backline support, like a Luna or Mantis. They can shoot through the shield, they can be healthy, you can jump back, use it as health, because remember that shield, when it's up, it's just up indefinitely. It is there. And your team, or you and your other supports, you can kind of use it like a healing pool. Drop back to it when you need to. Keep it in the back. But again, using it offensively, like I've shown, is crazy. Like, even if it gets cracked immediately, because again, it absorbed 300 damage. That's fine. You still have your primary healing, and when the cooldown comes back, you can start spamming it again. And I'm going to get into more of this in a second, but when you drop that on a tank on the front line, what that does is you're doing the heal combo on them. They're getting the immediate 50 and your primary heals, but the enemy tanks are right in front of them, so you've placed a shield on the enemy tank, like, just by default. And they're now slowed for 30% for 3 seconds, and you can combo all this. It's very powerful. A lot of my games, I have about half of what my tanks have as far as damage blocked. As Invisible Woman, you'll have 10, 15,000 damage blocked. The healing is where it should be. It's not as focused as, let's say, a Mantis or a Luna, but it's a major help in other ways. Like, the Guardian Shield's absurd. And the main thing for focused burst healing, primary, shield, follow up with primaries. In chaotic situations, primary, shield, move on to the next one, primary, shield. Try to keep as many kind of floating along. And since I started using it this way, immediate good results. All these next abilities I'm going to go through quicker, but after all of it, I'm going to tie it together. Next, the Psionic Vortex. Upon hitting a target, scene, or pressing the ability key again, it erupts into a Psionic Vortex, continuously drawing in enemies and causing damage. You can throw it, let it hit the wall or the ground, it's going to detonate and go off, or you can throw it, hit the same button again, and it'll detonate at that time, so you can do it midair, things like that. It's got a 12-second cooldown, it lasts for 4 seconds once it explodes. It deals 35 damage a second to the enemies caught within the vortex, and the special effect for this ability is it applies slow to enemies within the spell field. The closer they are to the center, the greater the slow effect. So 50% slowed in the middle of the vortex, at the edge is 0. So everything in between is scaled. It wants to pull enemies to the center of it, but they can move out. It's a zoning tool, a damage tool, a choke point tool, and also pretty much anything that has to do with in air, it drops it down. Like, let's say a storm or an Iron Man. Throw it up into the air, detonate it on where they are, it'll drop them. Same thing with a Wolverine leap. And a simple way to use it is throwing it on enemy tanks. That's a great choice because you deal damage to them, you slow them down, and they're taking the brunt end of your team's damage, and they're getting 50% slowed. And if I can, I have my Guardian Shield there too. We talked about it a second ago. I can shield my tank, it goes in front of them, so it touches the other tank, that slows them for 30%, and then I throw the Vortex on that. So that's another 50% slow. 80%. There's a ton you can do, and you have a lot of freedom with your choices. Next, Force Physics. Manipulate psionic energy to push or pull enemies in front of her. It's got an 8-second cooldown, a 30-meter cast distance, so just like the rest of her kit. It's your E, and on controllers, the top right bumper. Press the button, she puts her hands up in the air. Left click to launch outwards, right click to launch inwards on a controller, right trigger outwards, left trigger inwards. When you push them outwards, it's going to push them 12 meters. When you pull players to you, you will pull them 7 meters. And when you hit an enemy with this, it's going to deal 55 damage, push or pull. It's displacement. And also, if there's a cliff or a hole in the map, you could utilize that. Like right here versus a Magic, they were trying to get to the back line. I pushed them, did the 12 meters, right off the map. And in the same game, not too long after, a Loki was on the other side. I instead did the pull. I pulled the Loki into the pit. There are characters that can jump, but you might as well try it. Like this Spider-Man, they did jump, but they fumbled it. Really, really cool. You could be on that mid line, right with your tanks, and you could pull their tank closer to you guys, or you could push them back. So your tank's taking a lot of damage, and you push their whole front line back. Or maybe you're getting rushed. Maybe a Bucky's on you or whatever. They're trying to get close. You could just push them back to 12 meters and try to get away. Or like right here, I was invisible at the point. They didn't see me. I'm waiting for my team, but the Strange was looking for me. They knew I went invisible. They just couldn't find me. Well, I'm right here. Got a little bit close to the edge, so I pushed him right off. So very cool stuff you can do. It's also very good displacement versus other ultimates, like let's say Doctor Strange. As soon as you hear the Eye of Agamotto, you try to force push him away. He'll end up missing your team. Like Iron Man, if Iron Man's at 30 meters and in, you could push him and it's going to throw off his shot. We then have our invisibility stuff. The passive, enter invisible state sometime after disengaging from combat. You get healing over time. So 20 health a second, not very fast, but it's pretty decent. 6 seconds without dealing or receiving damage, you go invisible. Then her jump, space, and on controller it's A, generate a force field at your feet, stepping on it propels her into an invisible state. So it's a movement tool. So at the beginning of games, just spam it until you get close to the zone because you're going to have the cooldown back when you need it later. It's on a 6-second cooldown, but this is a way to disengage. It's a way to flank. One of my favorite things to do is say I'm getting rushed and I have a tank with me. Throw the Vortex on the tank, so it's this big blue orb on them. It slows them, and right after I throw it, I jump over them. And when you're invisible with Invisible Woman, it's true invisibility. You cannot be seen. Now, they can shoot you, and if they do that, you're gonna appear. But whenever you're invisible, you start getting health. So it could be used as a last second. You're getting rushed or you've overextended. You can jump at an angle, get away, get a new line of sight on the engagement, or try to get your health back. And being invisible in general, making those plays like we saw with the Doctor Strange. Or I have this Spider-Man here. They had their ult. He was going to go in and ult, so I was alive and just stayed invisible. Right when that Spider-Man came, started doing the ult, I started throwing the Vortex, started doing all my things, helping with the fight. So the invisibility is really, really nice. And also with the invisibility, there's a second part to that Doctor Strange clip. After I pushed him off, I ulted the zone, then the Jeff ulted me. Well, I'm just mashing the jump button, so as soon as the Jeff throws me off, I come right back on. So she's got that utility. The team up is with Mr. Fantastic, giving him a little bit of health, 15% healing boost. That's on the Mr. Fantastic to use. And then, of course, we have our ult, Invisible Boundary. Manifest an unseen force field within a chosen area. All allies are undetectable by enemies. Everyone gets healing over time on your team, but enemies that pass through are slowed. So when they pass that boundary, enemies are slowed 55%. So on your end, they can't see inside. You could be right on the edge and you can pull them in. They're only slowed for a second, but it's enough just to really slow them down. Your team gets healed 165 health a second, which is great. It's got a 10 meter radius around 40 meter height. It lasts for 8 seconds. It's not as strong as a Mantis ult or a Luna ult, but it does have its place. Usually, I like to start with this. If we do have a Luna or whatever, we can start with this, and if need be, the Luna can pop their ult. But remember, the enemies can't see inside, and what's available within her kit, say it was a failed push or a failed ult, we've all been there. From the outside looking in, they can't see anything. If they're inside, they can see you, but you could jump out. And remember, when you jump, you go invisible. You can just get outside of your spell field, recover, recuperate, and try again. It will help combat other ults that you see, such as Luna. You're going to place it on hills, on payloads, on zones. When your team needs to make a push and they're not pushing, you can kind of force your team to do that. So you're playing solo. Throw it on the point, and they're going to go. That gets us into her combos, and her combos kind of coexist with her playstyle. And it all brings us back right here, the very first part of the guide, where she lives. That midline behind the tanks and DPS, looking forward, you're with your support or just in front of your support. Everything in her kit is 30 meters and in. That's where she's most effective, with everything. You have a push of 12 meters, you have a pull of 7 meters, you have a vortex, you have a shield. All of your decisions are from right here. So a bread and butter combo that you'll use a lot, regardless of what the situation is. And I didn't talk about it heavily, but she does have a melee and a melee combo. V, and on controller, it's right stick clicking. You don't really want to be meleeing with her, but if you do, it's like the other heroes with animation cancels. You just primary melee, primary melee. You're getting the melee off in between shots for max DPS. So if you want to deal damage to an enemy, and we're going to do it in a vacuum here in the practice range, even better, let's say you're invisible. You have that surprise element. Immediately pull them in and drop the vortex. That's 55 damage from the pull in, and then 35 damage a second from this vortex that they're going to be slowed in. Then you just just primary, melee, primary, melee. A bread and butter thing. If they're close enough, you're going to throw in the melees. Most of the time, they're not going to be. But a lot of it is this. Throwing a vortex down, pulling them into it. Or the other way around. Push them out, throw a vortex behind them. Things like that. And regardless, that's kind of the main combination, because if you're in that mid line, healing and helping your team, like with this one, you would pull an enemy tank closer into your team, throw the vortex down, that's going to slow them and deal damage to them. Meanwhile, your tanks and DPS are hitting them too. Meanwhile, you're hitting your tanks and DPS, going through them and dealing damage on those enemies. Really, really nice. But I want to stress again, your job, first and foremost, you're there to keep your team alive. Period. The kills are going to happen. But the coolest thing about Invisible Woman is that while you're doing that, you have a ton of little micro decisions to make, and you can make a lot happen with those. Push enemies away, pull them in, vortex a payload. Like right here, this is a really good example of what I'm talking about. Start of the match, I start getting into position behind the payload, and I noticed this Penny on our team. Check this out. They put mines on the payload. Cool. One was even on the wheel just turning with it. As I move up, I see an enemy Captain America take high ground in the top left. I don't shoot at him, but I get closer. I get in position, and with my kit, I pull that Captain America legit perfectly onto those mines. Deleted cap. Pretty cool stuff. So say there's a penny trap on the ground, say there's a Groot wall, you can push them back into the Groot wall. She has a lot of play with your team. But after that, a Black Panther gets on us. The support. He's doing his combos, dashing around, but I land a force push on him right as he's getting ready to do another, and that throws him off. He misses. He missed the shift, so he's kind of done for the time being. He was low health anyway after I hit him with the force push. Then helped take out a Thor. Then our Thor got into trouble. I do the healing combo, throw up the shield. It's taking damage. Absorbing damage, I should say. There's a cloak here with me. Immediately filled up. We're just making things happen. The decisions and big plays you can make are near limitless with Invisible Woman. Like, it's so fun to play her. And again, a lot of time you throw the vortex, like versus this Namor. I threw it there to get him off the sideline, but I noticed it hurt him pretty bad. It taking some damage, so he tries to get away. I pull him back into the vortex and get the final blow. It's these little second-to-second combat decisions that are so cool. And one more thing before I forget, pretty big part of the video, so I forgot up until now, like this vortex, Punisher on a turret, Penny spider nest. You can go invisible, find out where those are, and just send the vortex on them. Greatest thing in the world. Anything like that in the game, you can throw the vortex on. Her kit's just really full of utility, but it starts right here. Heal through the tanks in the front line, damage the enemies behind them, and if you want, do the Guardian shield healing too. Like, it's absurd, I'm telling you. But beyond that, since you're already here, 30 meters and in, you can make a lot of decisions. And a lot of times you do play around that vortex when it comes to enemies. Like in the very first clip versus that rocket. After I got the health pack, I threw it on the ground knowing that no matter what, I'm playing to that vortex. So no matter where the rocket goes, I'm using the pull to pull him right back in. Now, in this particular case, the pull downed him, but if not, the vortex would have, or done more damage. So be sneaky, push and pull enemies off the map, go invisible, be ready for teammates. Maybe they're ulting. You can get behind the enemy team invisible, and when they ult, you can do your damage, jump and go invisible again. Be off the scene. A very high ceiling, highlighted by insane spot healing. Her big weakness is that she has very few things to defend herself. Luna can freeze a target and skate away. Cloak and Dagger make your screen foggy, kind of disappear. Mantis, put you to sleep, run away. For Invisible Woman, you have two things. You can push them away, and you have a double jump to go invis. So that's exactly what you need to do. If you're getting rushed down, push them away, do an immediate 180, do a horizontal double jump, and just be invisible. You do very poorly in a true 1v1 versus a DPS, or even other support. Or like I went through earlier, if you have to go forward, do some damage, so the vortex on the ground, jump over them. You're going to be invisible, try to get away, try to get your health back. Try some of these things, as always. Try them in the practice range, get a feel for them, apply it, get familiar, get comfortable, then get to some mastery. Gather as much information as you can from here, Reddit, other videos, be the best player that you can be. And I hope this guide helped. If you're new here, remember to hit the subscribe button. And if you are subscribed, thank you so much for your support. Let's talk about Invisible Woman down below. And of course, add any and all tips that you'd like. Let's help each other. Thank you for watching, and until the next one, I am CoolGuy.